What's up guys, it's Jack with Jack Flash Auto Repair. Today I'm going to be working on my 2014 Q50. I'm going to be doing a 4-wheel brake job, rotors and pads. I do love this car though. I'm just going to go ahead and show you guys how to do the front, how to do the back, what size of sockets you need, all that. I'll tell you all that. So let's get started. Okay, so here we've got everything you'll need to do this job. We've got your jack and jack stand. Use your jack stand. We've got a hook to hold your calipers, a 14mm ratchet. We've got a 1/2-inch ratchet with a 19mm and a 22mm socket. We've got a wire brush or a wire wheel. I used both. A big pair of pliers to depress your caliper, a hammer to get your rotors off, brake grease, brake cleaner, an impact with a 22mm socket to get your wheels off. That is all the stuff you need to do this job. Super simple, so let's get started. Okay, so I'm just, rather than jacking up the whole front end to do both sides, I am going to do both sides still. I'm just going to jack it up one side at a time because I don't really feel like setting it up on jack stands. I do have one jack stand down there for safety in case my jack fails, but this is more than enough clearance to go ahead and just do this brake job. So let's get started. The first thing you're going to want to do is kind of look at your bolts. It's going to be right there, right there. Those are your caliper bolts. And you're gonna wanna see if they're rusty or not. And these don't look terrible. It's pretty dark on the video, but these look pretty decent. They're probably 14mm. That is a 14. So we'll take these off, and then you want to use your little hook to go ahead and hang that up. And there's, this is a good spot. This is a good spot up here, on your upper control arm. Just hang it somewhere that your brake line isn't gonna be like taut. You don't wanna be putting stress on this rubber part right here. So that's what you wanna look out for. If you really want some extra clearance, you can take this clip off right here. You just pry that off like that, and then all this will be free. And you can move things a little bit more out of your way, but I'm probably just gonna try to put this up there. So I'm gonna spray these with some PB Blaster, take them off, and then hang this up, and we'll go from there. All right, now that we've got that caliper off and hung up out of the way, we want to go ahead and take this caliper bracket off. It takes a 22mm socket on the top and bottom bolt right here. You want to go ahead and just pop that off, and then your rotor will be free to come off. Alright, now that we got our caliper bracket off, we can go ahead and get our rotor off, and then we can start cleaning stuff up and putting it back on. So usually the first thing I go for when I'm getting a rotor off is a hammer. Now one of these won't really do it. You're gonna want to have like a real hammer. I call this my purse. And sometimes it's good to like pop a lug nut on there just so your rotor don't come flying out, back at you and bounce off the hub or anything. So go ahead and maybe slap one on a couple turns. That also kind of protects your threads from if you accidentally bop it. It usually just like that, it came loose. No pulling, no tugging, no WD-40, no waiting. Smack it off. Smack it right off. Just take it off. And if you just drove your car, this shit is gonna be really hot. So don't just grab it if it's that hot. Be careful. I know for a fact mine isn't hot, so that's why I grabbed mine. Might need 2 hands for this. Boom. All right. Okay, so this right here is your wheel hub. If this has play, you're gonna have a lot of noise while you're driving. So if you ever take your brakes off and this thing is wiggling around like crazy, you're gonna want to replace your wheel hub, which is these 2 bolts and these 2 bolts right here. Just real quick. Okay, so we're gonna want to clean off right here and like right here. Everywhere where the new rotor is gonna sit and, you know, that mating surface, we want all that cleaned up a little bit because that'll help it sit more perfectly flush on the rotor like it's supposed to. So we'll get the wire brush out, clean that up, and then we can start putting the new rotor on and the new pads. Alright guys, so we've got this hub looking a lot nicer. I just hit it with this wire brush right here and this wire wheel on my Milwaukee Fuel brushless 1/4 inch thingy. Got my dirty ass bracket right here. I'm gonna make sure that I've got some new hardware to put in that, and then I'm going to clean it up as well. I'm going to grease my caliper slides, and then I'm gonna start putting everything back together. So let's do that. Okay, so I got my caliper all cleaned up. These springs can be kind of, not hard, but there's a lot of them and they all look the same, but there's 2 different kinds and it won't fit if it's the wrong one. It'll be really clear. Like, you want it to sit flush like that. You got a little arm right here for your pad to kind of like go against. And yeah, so it's not too hard. So like, for example, this clip right here, you put this little arm in the lower part of your brake hardware in this middle hole, gosh darn it, and then you put the top part in that loop on the top. But as you can see with this one, it's sitting like way off, like a diagonal, and that's how you know it's not the right fit. So then what you do is you just grab another one and you come compare it, and you can see how the arm is flipped. Everything is just, it's the same clip, just flipped the opposite way. So now what you do is take the tape, and same way before, but this time it'll actually fit, and you just put it in there just like that. And this top part right here can be kind of tricky. You can like shove it in with your finger sometimes like that, like I just did. Sometimes you'll have to take a little flathead, which I did have to do on these other ones, and just kind of shove it in there. But as you can see, it's in there nice and snug. It's not going anywhere. You know, none of them are going anywhere. They all are in there like they should be. So yeah, now we just put our brake pads in. I'm gonna put a little bit of brake grease right here. Might make sure I don't put too much so I don't splatter it on my new rotor, and install everything. Okay guys, so everybody makes mistakes, and I just made one and it was really easy to make. But this is why, see, I kept my old hardware. You see this little arm is pushed under that tab, so you want to make sure your little arm is pushed under your tab. That way it makes good contact with your brake. See how much further away that is? push it under. Now it's right where it should be. So make sure that on your brakes, when you put your hardware in, you got it clipped in like that. Everybody makes mistakes. Make sure you grease up all your parts. I've got my brake pads installed now, so I am going to put this new rotor on and then just install everything back on. And the order you're going to do that is, and again, you want to make sure your hub is clean before you install everything, but you put your rotor on, put your caliper bracket on with the pads on it, squeeze the pads to the rotor, and then put your caliper on over your rotor. And you will have to depress the caliper, and I will show you guys how to do that when we get there. Okay guys, so when you usually get new rotors, if they're decent, they're gonna come greased up, some oil on them. That is just to prevent this raw material from rusting as it sits in the warehouse. You're gonna want to use some brake clean. I've been using it to clean this, in case anyone was wondering. You're gonna want to use some brake clean to spray all that off as much as you can. Be thorough, because like, you can just see that wet mark right there. That's just the grease that's on the edge of this right here. You can kind of see it's just very greasy. You really want to get all that off. You don't want that in your brake system. You don't want to start off your new, you know, your brand new brake job with some grease all over your brakes. That's not going to help you stop. So get all that off and then install everything. Alright guys, so I've got my rotor on there. I sprayed it off real good with brake clean. I used a glove to hold everything when I was putting it in place, and I went ahead and put this lug nut on there just to hold it flush against the hub, so that way when I put my caliper bracket and caliper back on, it's not so floppy and in the way. I do need to depress this caliper before I install the rest of the stuff, so I'm going to go ahead and show you guys how to do that now. Okay, so I always depress the caliper for the most part using my big old channel lock pliers. You can open up real wide to get across your brake caliper and just squeeze it real good. We're going to take our brake pad. I like to use the one that was on the, you know, pistons to begin with, just because I feel like it will sit on there a little bit better. And I put that over the pistons, and then I just squeeze everything inward. And just try to squeeze from the middle, and just squeeze them on in. And it shouldn't be incredibly hard. If it's super hard, you might have a problem with your caliper. Alright guys, so I've got everything back together. Everything's looking super duper. Gonna go ahead and hit it with some brake clean one more time just to be safe. I like to keep something underneath because this brake clean shit can be kind of hard on concrete. And just spray it off. Get it nice and clean and your brakes will perform well. You really want to make sure to keep your brakes clean. Alright, so got our front sides done. Now it's time to do the rear. And yeah, gonna be pretty much the same thing, but I'll show you how to do one wheel, and then I'll do a time lapse of the other, and that'll be it. So we've got a 14 millimeter right there and right there, and then a 19 millimeter up there and on the bottom. So I'm gonna crack those off real quick. take this off, depress the caliper, and do all the same stuff that I did on that front wheel. So here's how that's gonna look. Alright guys, so I got the rotor and everything off. This is your parking brake setup. These right here are your parking brake pads. This upper part, that's your pad. The lower part's the backing plate, and you can just kind of assess. Most of the time it's not too bad, but yeah, just a good chance to look at that. You might spray it off some brake clean while you're in there, and yeah, just clean your hub up like you did the front and go from there. Alright guys, I'm all finished, just finished up this wheel right here. And I'm gonna get in and start the car and go and all that, but before you do that, since you depressed all the calipers, make sure you pump your brakes up before you do anything. Alright, time to take it for a test drive.